MMA Rants and Raves, UFC 124. George St-Pierre versus Josh Koscheck 2. Guys, let's talk about this highly anticipated matchup. Let's start by talking about these two fighters. Let's start with Josh Koscheck. Guys, it's not going to get much better as far as a wrestling resume. I mean, the guy, he's a four-time NCAA Division All-American. He's a former collegiate wrestling champ. He holds numerous awards for many different wrestling leagues and organizations. And it shows in his fights. I mean, here's a guy that has wrestling figured out, and especially showed in his last two fights. I mean, especially Paul Daly. I mean, this guy doesn't just take guys down. He literally lifts them and throws them. And of course, what helps him do that is the fact that he's a really good athlete. You can see how good he is as far as especially deep into fights. His cardio is really good. So you know he's a good athlete. And Koscheck has gotten better. That's the key here, guys. People are always saying, oh, look at the last fight. We may expect to see the same thing. Koscheck has gotten better. He had 3 knockouts since the last George St-Pierre fight, which is, of course, all the way back in 2007. It seems that he's getting better as a fighter, and especially in the striking game. He also has a pretty good chin. He got knocked out only once by Paul Tiago, who has severe knockout power. And that can happen to a lot of guys. So, it's shown that he can take punishment and he can still bring it. That's another thing about him. And it makes him a really good fighter. All these aspects make him really good. He's got some submissions in his arsenal. He has some victories from rear naked choke. He won a fight with neck choke early in his career, some kind of type of submission that he did. So he's really good. He's pretty well-rounded as well. And as far as welterweights go, he's one of the best in the world, as far as I'm concerned. So that's Josh Koscheck. Let's talk about GSP. Now, I've spoken about GSP in depth many times in my prior vlogs. A guy like this, a guy like this basically comes around every 50, 60 years. As far as somebody who has the multitude of tools and talents that this man possesses. I mean, he's this world-class wrestler that doesn't even have a wrestling pedigree. I mean, that's remarkable. I mean, look at Koscheck's resume. He's like 4-time division winner. He's got all these awards, former collegiate champion. That's usually what you see. You see it with Koscheck. You see it, all these top wrestlers have these resumes. Whether it's Koscheck, whether it's Velasquez, whether it's Brock Lesnar. And it shows. They learned the things they had to learn in college. And they're bringing it into mixed martial arts, and they're being very successful with it. But if you take GSP, he learned this. I mean, that's amazing. So it shows how extremely intelligent he is as a fighter. He was able to learn this stuff. Wrestling is not something that's easy to learn. And boy, did he learn it. I mean, he's not just world class. He is Olympic caliber. I heard that he may compete in the 2012 Olympics. So, he's up there amongst the best. Now, there's something else I wanted to mention about him. He has something that I can only think maybe one fighter has. He's one of the best wrestlers in mixed martial arts, probably in the world. And he combines that with a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I mean, and it shows how good his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. I mean, he has 2 victories, one by armbar and one by Kimura. He almost Kimura Dan Hardy. So, guys, I don't know why this hasn't been spoken about much. How many guys can you think of that hold a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and they're really good at it, have victories using their Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and at the same time are Olympic caliber wrestlers? I mean, that's incredible to have those 2 mixed martial arts in your arsenal. You're able to put those things together and implement them into a fighting skill. It makes you so dangerous. And that's the thing with this guy. And there's a point I want to make here. The point is, if you look at GSP as a wrestler, he shoots for takedowns, does it with power, and he has that athletic ability. That's another thing I wanted to mention. Pound for pound, he's probably the strongest man in mixed martial arts today. I mean, the guy is an Olympic lifter. I mean, I see the way he dominates guys. He's just able to drag people to the ground. He did it to Alves, who's a really strong guy. He's able to throw him down. Did it to Koscheck. I mean, who throws around Josh Koscheck? Dan Hardy. I mean, you name it. Every fighter, especially over his recent fight, he's been able to take these guys down. Of course, GSP is getting even bigger and stronger. I mean, he's constantly working on his endurance and his athleticism. So, you know, he has all this going for him, and including being a cardio machine. This guy doesn't get tired. So if he gets you deep into a fight, you're really in trouble, unless you have good cardio as well. So the point being is, you take all this stuff and you put it into a fighting arena. When he gets guys down as a wrestler, and I'm talking about comparing this to any cut and dry wrestler. Let's say he's just a wrestler. Of course, wrestlers are not just good at getting people down. They're able to cover them and prevent them from getting up, to control them, to not allow them to regain their footing and to continue grappling and controlling them. That's the mark of a great wrestler. But just think about this, guys. If you get a guy down, and you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, that guy, who of course is thinking about one thing, and that's getting back to his feet, right? Think about how much more difficult it is for that guy to get back to his feet if he's constantly trying to defend and fend off submission attempts, especially if the guy on the bottom is not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and many out there aren't. They have to worry about getting Kimura, about getting armbarred, especially from a guy up top. The armbar really comes into play. You cover the guy up, and then you pull the arm back, get wrist control, and then throw the legs above the body, and that's it. There goes an armbar. Then you got the Kimura to worry about. You got to worry about the guy having and trying to get full mount and spinning you around and getting a rear naked choke. So it just makes it that much harder from them getting back to their feet. And that's what really makes him so much tougher when he's up on top of a guy, of his opponent. It's the control, the power as a wrestler. And then in addition to that, it's him trying to implement all those multitude of different types of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu submission skills on his opponent. And another reason why it makes GSP so tough and so much tougher for his opponents to regain their footing. And that's really another overriding factor in this fight coming up with Josh Koscheck. Josh Koscheck is not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I mean, he studies it, he has submissions in his career, but he's not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I mean, he doesn't win fights with Kimuras and armbars. And when he's on the ground, if it gets to the ground, and let me tell you something, Josh Koscheck is a really good wrestler. He actually took GSP down. You don't see that happening often. But GSP is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so Koscheck has to be careful. Koscheck has to worry about that. GSP does not. And when GSP gets Koscheck down, and he did in his last fight, Koscheck has to worry about getting submitted. GSP has a very big advantage in this fight. And here's the other advantage, guys. How good Koscheck is, he's not the athlete that GSP is. He's not that Olympic caliber type of athlete. So the point I'm trying to make here, and here's another point. Out of all mixed martial arts, being a great athlete helps wrestling more as opposed to other mixed martial arts, because wrestling, you're using a lot of strength and a lot of cardio. You got to physically get a guy down to the ground. And when you're super strong and super athletic with amazing cardio, like GSP possesses, it just helps you more than it does your opponent. And in the next coming fight, you're going to see the biggest, the most dangerous, the most powerful GSP out there. And in my opinion, it just might be too much for Josh Koscheck to deal with. I know Koscheck is getting better, and he has a chance in this fight, you know. He's that good. His striking has gotten better. As you saw in GSP's career, earlier in his career, he has been caught, and it's possible that it can happen, because these guys are going to have a lot of contact. You know, they're grapplers. So things happen. Guys get caught. So don't write Josh Koscheck off. You know, he definitely has a chance in this fight. But with all these things happening at one time, and GSP getting smarter as a fighter, when you get smarter, you make less mistakes. And when you get more experience, you make less mistakes. So I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to take GSP in this fight. I would like to know what you think about this highly anticipated matchup. Please leave your comments below the video, rate this video and subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.